You faced them for decades, from shy Boos to raging Bowsers, but do you really know the secrets hiding behind Mario's most iconic villains? Tonight, we'll uncover 155 hidden truths that even lifelong fans often miss. But the real question is, were these enemies ever meant to be defeated? Or were they trying to tell us something all along? It starts with a screen, a black one. Then, boop, a single note, bright and soft, flickers from your memory like an old nightlight turning on again. And just like that, you're there, back in the world of Super Mario. But this time, we're not talking about mushrooms or fire flowers. Not tonight. Tonight, we're going to talk about the ones who made those stories matter. The villains. The creatures and characters who stood in the way, who shaped the paths, who waited at the end of every bridge or castle or dark hallway. The ones who made the world feel real. Where are you watching from tonight? Is it quiet where you are? Can you hear a soft fan or a gentle breeze through a cracked window? Maybe the hum of a sleepy city below, or the far-off chirp of crickets outside your room. Maybe you're curled up in bed, phone in hand, the pillow just right. Or maybe you're resting on a couch, lights dim, trying to let your mind slow down. However you found your way here, I'm glad you did. Because tonight, we're not racing to save a princess. We're not chasing stars, we're remembering. Not just the games, but the shadows behind them. The ones we jumped over, ducked under, threw shells at, and sometimes lost to. When the first Super Mario game came out in 1985, most people didn't know what to expect. The world was made of blocks. The sky was always blue. And the music, somehow, felt like it was smiling. But even in that simple land, there were things that pushed back. Goombas with flat feet and frowny faces. Koopas that tucked into shells and rolled right back at you. A hammer-throwing brother who wouldn't stop unless you timed everything just right. These weren't just bad guys. They were lessons. They taught us how to move, how to react, how to get stronger without saying a word, and they never stopped coming. There's something comforting about that, knowing that every level would have something waiting for you. A new trick, a new face, a new way to fail, and try again. Even when you turned the game off, those faces stayed in your head. Sometimes you'd even dream about them. A lava bridge, a ghost that only moved when you looked away. A door that opened into a dark room with only one enemy inside, standing still, watching. These were the parts that made the world of Mario feel bigger than the screen, like there was something more happening, something we couldn't quite reach, but could feel. The first villain most players met was Bowser, big, spiky, and loud. He didn't need much explanation. He just stood there, breathing fire, waiting at the end. And when you ran under him and hit the switch to drop him into the lava, it felt like winning something bigger than a game. But here's the strange part. That wasn't really him. Not always. In the early games, most of those Bowsers were fakes, just other enemies in disguise. The real Bowser was waiting, somewhere farther along. Why did they do that? Why trick the player like that? Maybe it was just a design choice. Or maybe it was the game's way of whispering something, that not everything is what it seems. Even in those early days, the bad guys weren't just tools or problems. They were pieces of a bigger story. Why were the Goombas angry? Why did the Koopas help Bowser? Who built all these castles with moving floors and lava pits? Nobody ever told us. The game didn't need to. It just let us wonder, and somehow that made it more real. A little mystery wrapped inside a simple game. As the years went on, new villains appeared. Some stayed, some vanished. But every time we picked up a controller, they were waiting. Not just to stop us, but to teach us, to help us grow, to be a part of the world we loved. Because what is a hero without someone or something to stand against? Tonight, we'll be walking gently through those shadows. We'll look at 155 stories, secrets, and soft details about Mario's villains, some well known, some almost forgotten. And we'll do it slowly, calmly, like turning pages in a dream you've had many times before. A dream that's not scary, just familiar, safe. The kind where even the monsters aren't really monsters. They're just part of the story. So if your eyes are starting to feel heavy already, that's okay. You don't need to stay awake for every word. These stories will be here, waiting, just like they always have been. For now, just breathe. Let the memories settle in. The first steps of the journey are behind us, and ahead, the villains are waiting, quietly, just like they always do. In the early days, game systems were tiny. Inside, they held only a few small pieces of memory, like a tiny backpack that could only carry so much. Every sound, every picture, every movement had to fit into that little space. It was like building a whole world using only a handful of puzzle pieces. And somehow, they did it. The creators of Super Mario found clever ways to make the most out of very little. And when it came to villains, they had to be extra smart. Take the Goomba, for example. He looked simple, just a brown frown with two tiny feet. But that design was not just a choice, it was a solution. You see, they didn't have enough room in the system to fit another big enemy. So they used just one frame of animation, one picture, and then they flipped it back and forth, quickly, to make it look like he was walking. That's why Goombas move in that little wobble. It wasn't for style, it was for space, but now it feels like personality, as if he's marching with a quiet grumble. The Koopas were another trick. They looked like turtles, but when you stomped on them, they didn't disappear. They went into their shells, and those shells became tools. You could kick them, send them flying, use them to knock down other enemies. All of this from just one creature. Why? Because the game could only show so many moving things at once, so the Koopa had to do more than just walk. It had to help you after you beat it. That wasn't just a shortcut. It was smart design. Then there was the Boo. Floating, round, and shy. Boos only moved when you weren't looking, and when you turned around they froze, like statues, like they were scared. But the truth is, that behavior also helped the system. By freezing the Boos when you looked at them, the game didn't have to move as many things at once. It saved power. It saved space. But it also made something special. A new kind of enemy. One that felt alive. One that made you think about where you were standing, where you were facing, and how close that ghost really was. Every enemy had a job, and every job had to fit inside the limits of the machine. The fire bars in Bowser's castles, those spinning flames on a stick, weren't just scary. They were made to move in a circle, repeating the same pattern, so the game didn't have to work too hard to make them behave. But to us, they looked like traps from some ancient world, like puzzles we had to read rather than solve. Even the sound of villains was shaped by these limits. The clink of a shell, the soft hiss of a fireball, the thump when a boss landed, they were all made with only a few notes, a few beeps, but those sounds stuck with us. And somehow, they felt just right, just enough to tell your brain something dangerous is near. Sometimes, when the game ran out of space, it would start to flicker. You might see part of an enemy vanish for a moment, then come back. It looked strange at first, but after a while, it became part of the charm. Like the world itself was stretching, trying to hold everything together, trying to show you all it could, even if it wasn't perfect. That flicker made it feel haunted. Not scary, just dreamlike, like a memory that you can almost see, but not quite. And it wasn't just about what they could do, it was about what they couldn't. The old games couldn't tell long stories with words, so they told them with feelings, with patterns, with moods. The lava bubbles didn't talk, but they jumped out of the lava again and again, like they were alive, like they were watching. The thwomps didn't chase you, but they slammed down hard when you got too close, as if they were angry. The Cheep Cheeps didn't mean harm, but when they leapt out of the water at just the wrong time, they made your heart skip. Not because of words, because of timing. Every villain in those early days had to be more than just a monster. It had to be a lesson. A little moving teacher. It had to teach you how to jump higher, move smarter, or try again. And it had to do all of that with only a few frames, a few lines, a few notes. And yet, we remember them, all these years later. Not because they were big or loud, but because they were clear. Because they fit inside those tiny spaces so well. Like the feeling of a soft tune you hum to yourself without knowing why. Like a bedtime story told with only 3 pictures and a single whisper. Those limits didn't stop the world of Super Mario. They built it. They shaped every enemy, every boss, every ghost, shell, and flame. And somehow, by doing so little, they gave us so much. Now that the pieces are in place, the shapes, the sounds, the space, we're ready to meet the villains themselves. One by one, their first steps, their strange beginnings, the way they quietly grew into legends, just like the world around them. The first time Bowser showed his face, it wasn't just a big moment. It was the moment. There he stood, breathing fire, covered in spikes, arms raised, and eyes sharp like the edge of a dream. He wasn't just another enemy. He was the end of the level. The final door. The test you had to pass. And even though the pixels were simple, just a few shapes and colors, he felt real. His castle was dark and full of traps, and the music changed the second you walked in. It got faster, a little louder, like something was waiting. But here's a strange little truth. Not every Bowser was Bowser. In the very first Super Mario Bros., the early castles were guarded by fake Bowsers. Look closely, and you'd see something strange when you hit them with fireballs. They turned into other enemies, Goombas, Koopas, even Buzzy Beetles. These weren't clones, they were disguises. The real Bowser, he was waiting at the very last castle, big, mean, and harder to beat. Why hide him like that? Maybe it was just a trick, or maybe the game was showing us something deeper. That danger grows, that some shadows are real and some are just practice. Not long after Bowser came the others. One by one, they stepped into the spotlight, quiet at first, but unforgettable. Wart was one of them. A giant frog with a crown and a sour face. He ruled the land of dreams in Super Mario Bros. 2. But he was different. He didn't breathe fire or spin in the air. He hated vegetables. You had to throw them into his mouth while he coughed and jumped. He felt out of place, like a villain from another world. And he was. The whole game was based on a dream. When Mario woke up, Wart was gone. Just a memory, a whisper, a bedtime story that vanished by morning. And then came Bowser's children, the Koopalings, each with their own style, their own hair, their own tricks. Larry, Morton, Wendy, Lemmy, Iggy, Roy, and Ludwig. They first appeared in Super Mario Bros. 3, one of the biggest games of its time. They didn't just copy Bowser, they added new moves, new challenges. Lemmy bounced on balls, Iggy used strange magic. Wendy shot rings that followed you. They each guarded a ship in the sky, drifting through clouds and cannons. And when the music started, fast and heavy, it meant you were getting close. These weren't just mini-bosses. They were family. They made Bowser feel bigger, like a king with a whole kingdom of kids. Later, Super Mario World brought in Reznor. 4 stone dinosaurs spinning on a wheel, breathing fire, guarding bridges. They didn't say anything. They didn't move much. But they waited. And when you hit one, the others sped up. If you weren't fast, the whole platform would fall. Reznor didn't become famous like Bowser, but if you met them once, you remembered. They were quiet villains, stone and fire, simple but strong. And then came Boo, a soft, round ghost with a small mouth and sharp teeth. But Boo didn't charge at you. He waited and watched. He moved only when your back was turned. If you looked at him, he froze. If you looked away, he floated closer. In Super Mario Bros. 3, he appeared in dark levels. Slow music, empty rooms. He made the silence feel thick, and he was based on something real. One of the game makers said Boo was inspired by his wife, kind and quiet, but sometimes angry when ignored. That tiny story gave the Boo something more, a feeling, a reason, a face behind the shadow. In Super Mario 64, everything changed. Villains were no longer stuck to the ground. They were 3D now. They could move in space, walk around you, jump up, fall down. King Bob Alm was one of the first. A giant mustache bomb who stood on a mountain. You couldn't just jump on him. You had to pick him up and throw him 3 times off the edge, but not just anywhere. You had to throw him on the mountaintop, not over it. If you did it wrong, he'd scold you. Yes, scold you. Because now villains had voices, lines, feelings. They weren't just objects, they were characters. King Womp was another. A walking wall with a face and a crown. He didn't punch or chase, he tried to crush you, slam his whole body down on you like a building falling from the sky. But he had one weak spot, his back. You had to wait, let him fall, then jump on him. These new villains were puzzles, moving puzzles with eyes and names. Even Bowser changed in Super Mario 64. He became huge, his roar echoed. You had to grab his tail, spin him in circles, and throw him into a bomb. It wasn't easy, it took timing, strength, a little bit of luck. And when you finally beat him, he didn't scream or explode. He faded away, said a few final words, and left behind a key, always a key. But villains weren't just in the big games. They appeared in side stories too. In Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga, there was Fawful, a wild red-eyed villain with strange grammar and big plans. He said things like, "I have fury," and "Your lives that I spit on are now but a caricature of a cartoon drawn by a kid who is stupid." He was weird, funny, and a little scary. Because sometimes the strangest words are the ones that stay with you. There were more, many more. Petey Piranha, with his giant mouth and diaper, King Boo, who ruled haunted mansions, and Tazma, a vampire-like shadow with a dreamlike voice, and even Dry Bowser, a bony version of the king, risen from lava like something that refused to be forgotten. Each one came with a story, some loud, some quiet, but all worth remembering. The villains of Super Mario didn't all shout or roar. Some tiptoed, some tricked, some just stared. But they all shaped the path. They all made the jumps harder, the wins sweeter, and the endings more magical. And they all had one thing in common. They were there, waiting. Not just to stop you, but to make sure you earned the journey. And even now, as we sit quietly, remembering, their shadows still flicker in the corners of old levels. They don't fade, they don't vanish. Because once a villain is part of your story, it stays. Just like a soft dream you almost forgot, until someone whispers it back into the dark. Before the ghosts had faces, before the castles had moving walls, before the lava bubbled and the skies rumbled with cannons, there were blocks, just blocks. Brown, gray, orange, some soft, some solid, some hiding secrets. The earliest worlds in Super Mario weren't big or fancy. They were simple lines drawn in the sky. Green grass, blue sky, a few clouds that didn't move. And under it all, a quiet trick was being played. You thought you were just moving forward, left to right. But the game was building a world inside your head, one step at a time. The first levels weren't scary. Not on the surface. They were cheerful, bright. But look closer and you'd find something odd. A lone pit in the ground that went nowhere. A pipe you couldn't enter. A staircase made of bricks that led to nothing at all. And sometimes a Goomba waiting too early, almost like it was testing you. These strange pieces weren't mistakes. They were clues. Little hints that something deeper was going on. That this wasn't just a game of jumps, but a game of feeling. The way you moved through the level felt right, like walking through a song, one made of silence and surprise, and then just a few levels in, a castle made of stone. The music changed. It got darker, lower, like a slow drum beat. And the walls were gray, not warm like before. No coins, no grass, just fire bars spinning, lava pits bubbling, and a long hallway to walk down. This was where the villains lived. This was their world. And even without words, you knew it, you felt it. The shapes were sharp, the traps were strict, and the air felt heavy even through the screen. The creators of the game were doing something quiet and brilliant. They were designing feelings. The worlds looked one way, but felt another. The first world was light. The second was underground, with low ceilings and deep colors. The third had water, where things moved slower, and enemies floated just out of reach. And the fourth? The fourth had sky. Floating platforms, big gaps, the kind that made your stomach flip, even though you were just holding a controller. And in each of these places, the villains were different. Not just in shape, but in behavior. The Cheep Cheeps jumped in World 3 because it was water-themed. The Hammer Bros appeared in World 5, tossing trouble from tall places because the levels were vertical. The enemies matched the world, like actors walking onto a stage made just for them. Some levels had darkness. Not real darkness, but a kind of quiet. You'd walk into a room and the background would be black. The only sound was your footsteps and maybe a single enemy floating ahead. This was the world of the boos, the dry bones, the thwomps, ghosts, bones, stone. These worlds didn't need scary music or flashing lights. They were scary because of the emptiness, the stillness. You didn't know what was waiting around the next corner, and that made you pause, made you listen. In Super Mario Bros. 3, the world map came alive. For the first time, you weren't just moving from level to level, you were looking at the whole world at once. Each one had a name: Grassland, Desertland, Waterland, Giantland, Skyland, Iceland, Pipeland, and finally Darkland. The names were simple, but they told a story, one that got darker and stranger as you moved along. You started in soft grass. You ended in a place filled with shadows and fire. Darkland was where the worst villains lived. Tanks rolled through, airships rumbled, and Bowser's castle loomed in the black. And even though everything was still made of pixels, it felt like the edge of the world, like you were stepping into something that wasn't meant for you. A place only villains called home. In Super Mario World, things got even more detailed. Ghost houses appeared, full of looping doors, disappearing floors, and tricks you had to solve, not just beat. These houses weren't fast or loud. They were slow, soft, like puzzles with mist in the corners. They didn't look scary, but they felt like a whisper, like something watching you from the corner of the room. The castles grew too. Now they had moving walls, crushing ceilings, and timed gates. You had to think, to wait, to feel your way forward. And at the end of each castle, a villain waited, not just standing there, but part of the room. Morton stomped and made the floor shift. Ludwig shot fire that bounced strangely. The rooms weren't just backdrops, they were alive, and the villains fit into them like they'd been born there. Even the sounds changed. When you entered a villain's world, the music slowed. It stretched, notes held too long, drums that felt like footsteps behind you. In water levels, the music became round and floaty, almost like it was underwater too. In sky levels, it became light and bouncy. But in castles and ghost houses, it was tight and quiet, like someone breathing in the dark. All of this, every piece of it, was built from tiny choices. Simple shapes, careful colors, sounds that only lasted a few seconds, but stayed in your memory for years. The worlds of the villains weren't just places on a map. They were moods, feelings, spaces that changed the way you moved, thought, and felt. And somehow, even though these places were meant to stop you, they became part of why you kept playing. The lava pits, the foggy rooms, the long staircases with no end. They made the world feel whole. They made the villains feel real. Because when you walk into a place and the whole room feels like it's watching you, you remember it. The earliest worlds didn't have stories, but they had shape and sound and shadow, and they taught us something without saying a word, that even in a world of jumping and running, there's space for mystery, for fear, for wonder. And just when you thought you'd seen it all, the world would shift again, a new level, a new trick, a new kind of silence. And you'd feel it in your chest, in your hands, in your breath. The world had changed, and something new was waiting. Because in the world of Super Mario, every villain has a home, and every home has a secret. The world of Mario never stayed the same. It grew slowly, softly, like a dream that adds new pieces each time you visit. What began as square hills and floating bricks turned into places that shimmered, places that moved, places that whispered secrets from corners you couldn't always reach. The worlds didn't just get bigger. They changed shape, changed sound, changed feeling. And with each change, the villains inside them changed too. Not in who they were, but in how they lived, how they moved, how they made you feel when you met them again. In the beginning, villain homes were simple: a castle with lava, a sky with a ship, a tower with stairs. But soon, those spaces stretched out. In Super Mario 64, Bowser's Castle wasn't just a place you walked into, it was a whole world. You didn't jump straight to the villain anymore. You had to explore, to search. The hallways had paintings, and the paintings led to other places: snowy mountains, haunted houses, tiny islands. Each place had its own sky, its own music, its own breath. The haunted house in Super Mario 64 was quiet, too quiet. The wooden floors creaked. The air felt still, like it hadn't moved in years. The boos didn't rush at you. They hovered, circled, vanished. You could hear soft laughter sometimes, or a piano playing itself. And when you found the Big Boo, he didn't roar. He spun slowly, watching you with eyes that didn't blink. Even the light in that world was different: dim, soft, with long shadows. The fear wasn't loud, it crept in like fog. And the lava worlds, oh, how they changed. No longer flat, no longer simple. Now they bubbled and moved, platforms rose and sank. Heat shimmered in the air. The lava wasn't just something to avoid, it was alive. In Lethal, Lava Land, a volcano waited in the middle. You could jump inside it. Go deeper, and down there under the crust, spinning fireballs danced in the dark. Even the floor moved beneath you. Everything swayed, just enough to make you feel unsure. Snow levels brought something else. Not fear, but stillness. In Cool, Cool Mountain, snowflakes fell gently. The wind whispered, not whistled. And though the place had enemies, like spinning snowmen or jumping penguins, it felt more peaceful than scary. Villains in snowy levels moved slower. Their colors were soft, blues and whites. Their sounds muffled, like the world itself was wrapped in a warm blanket. And then came Super Mario Sunshine, a world of light, beaches, water, shadows hiding in brightness. Even in this cheerful place, villains found a home, but they didn't look like monsters anymore. They looked like tricksters, like pieces of the world gone wrong. Shadow Mario appeared, not with fire, but with water. He ran, he didn't fight, he splashed paint and vanished. The world was sunny, but the danger was quiet, playful, like chasing a shadow at the edge of a pool. Even Bowser changed in this game. He didn't wait in a castle. He floated in a hot tub above a lava-filled mountain, laughing like he was on vacation. It was strange, funny, but also kind of calm, like the game was showing us something new, that villains don't always have to roar. Sometimes they can float. Super Mario Galaxy took the worlds even farther. Now, you weren't just walking through forests or deserts. You were flying through stars. Planets spun under your feet. Gravity pulled in soft circles. And the villains? They change with the space. Some looked small from far away, then huge up close. Others blinked in and out like comets. The worlds were cold sometimes, empty like deep space, but they were beautiful too. Star-shaped paths, blue sparkles in the sky. The music swelled softly, full of strings and wonder. And when you met Bowser here, he felt larger, not just in size, in spirit, like a part of the galaxy itself. The villain worlds in Galaxy were strange but slow. They didn't rush you. They asked you to look, to listen. The lava planets glowed, the ghost planets spun in silence. Some levels were upside down, others looped back. You weren't just playing anymore, you were floating through a story that bent around you. Then came Super Mario Odyssey. The worlds here were wild and wide. A dark forest where everything was tall. A desert where time had frozen. A ruined kingdom where the air felt cold and blue. And even a city, real and full of lights, where people walked and cars moved and Bowser's posters hung on the walls. Each place had its own mood, its own voice, and every villain in these places matched the tone. In the forest, robots guarded flowers. In the desert, a frozen sphinx asked soft riddles. In the ruined kingdom, a huge dragon waited, gray and heavy, with quiet breath and glowing eyes. This dragon didn't belong in a Mario game, but somehow he did. He didn't roar when you arrived. He stared. His wings folded. The music there was almost nothing, just slow piano and wind, and even Bowser, once more, was different. He wore a white suit, held a bouquet, smiled in a way that didn't feel right. His world was not made of spikes anymore. It was made of gold and stone and silence. He didn't just fight you, he led you. Through clouds, through bells, through moonlight. And at the very end, something soft happened. You didn't beat him, you became him. For just a moment, you used him to escape. And when it was over, he sat there, sad, not angry, just still. The villain worlds had changed, from blocky castles to floating ruins, from spinning lava wheels to quiet galaxies, from ghost houses to glittering cities. But through it all, they kept one thing the same, a feeling, that soft pull in your chest, that careful step forward, that moment when the music fades and the silence says something is here. They weren't just levels, they were places, places where villains waited, not just to stop you, but to show you what the world could be, what it could feel like, what it could whisper in your ear when everything else was quiet. And maybe that's why we remember them, because even in a game filled with stars and coins and jumps, it's the silence before a boss, the hallway with no music, the castle that creaks, the snow that falls. Those moments stay with us, like footprints in soft sand, or shadows that move just after you look away. Bowser was never quiet. From the very first time we saw him, he filled the screen, big and heavy, his shell spiked, his breath full of fire. He was loud in the way only something wordless can be. A growl in the background music, a stomp in the silence. He didn't need a backstory to feel like a boss. He just stood at the end of the level, waiting, always waiting. But as the years went on, Bowser changed. Not all at once, but slowly in quiet ways. His face began to show more than anger. Sometimes he looked surprised, sometimes even worried. His eyes moved more. His arms pointed and waved. He started to speak too, just a few lines at first, sometimes silly, sometimes full of fire, and with each game a little more of him was revealed. Not just the villain, but the character. In Super Mario 64, Bowser laughed in echo. He spun when thrown. He vanished with a flash. He didn't talk much, but he seemed to enjoy the game, almost like he was playing it too. In Sunshine, he talked from a giant hot tub in the sky. His voice was deep, but soft. He called Mario by name. He called Peach Mama. And for a moment, everything felt strange and still. Was Bowser just pretending to be a monster? Was he building a story all his own? Then came Galaxy. Here, Bowser was grand, not goofy, not clumsy, but powerful. The music behind him was full of strings and storms. He floated above fire and light, shouting about the galaxy, about power, about something bigger than we had heard before. But even then, even in the middle of all that thunder, you could still see it in his eyes. A little spark, a little sadness. He wasn't just trying to win. He was trying to matter. Sometimes Bowser was silly, like in Mario and Luigi, Bowser's Inside Story, where you could play as him, walk in his shoes, feel his breath, punch and roar, and even talk to his own thoughts. He wasn't evil there, just confused, a little lost, trying to do things his way. He didn't want to destroy everything. He wanted to be strong, to be seen, to be respected. That small, quiet goal made him feel more real than ever. And in Odyssey, Bowser wore a white suit. He planned a wedding, he collected rings, flowers, and even guests from every kingdom. It should have felt silly, but instead, it felt like a story. A strange, soft story about a monster who thought he could marry the princess if he made it perfect, if he looked nice, if he asked the right way. Of course, he was wrong, but still, he tried. And when you finally beat him and the moon began to fall, you didn't run from Bowser. You ran as him. You jumped through the crumbling world with his big feet, his heavy shell, his loud breath. And when it was over, he sat quietly in the moon dust, not angry, not roaring, just still, like he knew, like he understood. Bowser wasn't alone, of course. He never was. There was always someone near him, someone helping or watching or stepping in when he needed backup. And none stayed longer than Kamek. Kamek was small, a Magikoopa, always floating on a broom, always wearing a blue robe and glasses. He didn't talk much either, but you could hear him. His magic made a soft shoom sound, and his wand sparkled with gentle flashes. He would float in, wave his wand, and change the world around you, make platforms disappear, make enemies grow. He didn't laugh or scream, he just did. Always in the background, always making things harder in the quietest way. He first showed up in Yoshi's Island, watching over baby Bowser, protecting him like a strange uncle. And over time, he kept coming back, in castles, in airships, in battles where he helped Bowser at the very last moment. You never saw him lead, but he was always there, just a few steps behind. Not a main villain, but something softer, a shadow that cared. And then there were the Koopalings, Bowser's kids, or at least that's what many thought for years. Larry, Wendy, Roy, Iggy, Lemmy, Ludwig, and Morton. Each with a different color, a different laugh, a different way of making you feel like you were in trouble. They didn't roar or chase, they bounced, rolled, spun, and launched. They made their rooms feel like puzzles. You didn't just fight them, you danced with them. They had little animations. Lemmy balanced on a ball, Iggy made his platform tilt. Wendy's rings followed you like ripples on water. Their music was fast but playful, like something you'd hear in a toy store after dark. And when you beat them, they didn't vanish. They just flew away, like they'd come back, like they were a part of a bigger family you didn't fully understand. Bowser Jr. came later, a new face, smaller, quicker, always in a floating clown car. He painted graffiti, wore a mask. And at first we didn't know who he was, but then we learned he was Bowser's son. And just like that, Bowser became something else, a dad. Not just a king or a beast, but a parent trying to raise a child his way. Maybe not the best way, but still a way. Bowser Jr. was wild, fast, sneaky. But he wasn't cruel. He just wanted to help his dad, to do what he thought was right. He built machines, threw paint, got into trouble, and even fought Mario. But in the end, he always looked back, looked up, looked for Bowser's face in the sky. And that's the thing. These villains, they weren't just bosses. They weren't just fights. They had stories, feelings, Tiny moments that showed they were more than just the enemy. They had families. They had fears. They had dreams. And maybe that's why, even now, they stay with us. Not because they were scary, not because they were hard, but because they were full of life, full of quiet thoughts, full of strange soft hopes hiding behind roars and fire. As you drift deeper into rest, think about them. Not as monsters, but as characters, moving through castles, floating through dreams. Sometimes angry, sometimes silly, sometimes sad, but always there, always waiting, not to stop you, but to be remembered. Not every villain in the world of Mario was loud or large. Some were quiet, some were slow, some didn't even chase you. They just stood in place, waiting, watching. These were the ones you might forget at first, but when the lights are low and your mind drifts back through old memories, they gently return, like soft ripples in a still pond. There was Thwomp, a huge stone block with angry eyes and a mouthful of square teeth. He didn't walk or throw things, he just slammed down from above, fast and heavy, but only when you stepped too close. The rest of the time, he sat still, waiting in silence. When he dropped, it made a low rumble, like thunder far away. He didn't roar, he didn't chase. He just fell. And when he missed, he slowly floated back up again, as if pushed by some invisible hand. There were smaller versions too, called thwimps. They jumped in little patterns, careful and tight. You could almost predict them if you watched closely enough. They didn't mean harm, they were just doing their job, moving in their set path, like a music box turning through its tune. Then there were the chain chomps, black metal balls with wide mouths and sharp teeth. They barked, loud and wild, but they were chained, always pulling against their posts, trying to break free, but they never could. They only reached so far, and once you learned their limit, you could walk past in safety. It felt like they were angry, not at you, but at the chain itself, as if they wanted to run somewhere, anywhere, but couldn't. And Boo was never alone. Alongside him were Big Boos, Boo Buddies, and even Eries, ghosts that floated in slow loops. They didn't stop when you looked at them. They didn't freeze or hide. They just kept moving, passing through walls and blocks, like memories that couldn't be touched. Their movement was soft, their glow faint. They weren't there to scare you. They were there to remind you of the past, of places left behind, of things half remembered. Dry bones clattered in the dark, skeleton Koopas made of dusty gray bones. When you stomped on them, they crumbled into a pile, but after a few seconds, they stood up again, quietly, slowly, as if nothing had happened. You couldn't really beat them, only pause them. They didn't run or shout. They just followed, one footstep at a time, through empty hallways and stone bridges. They felt ancient, like they'd been walking those paths for a long, long time. Sometimes a strange boss would appear just once. Maybe you saw it when you were young, half asleep, and wondered later if it was real, like the big lantern ghost who held a lamp in a dark room. You had to light his path just to see him. He wasn't mean. He looked confused, a little sad, like he was stuck in the dark too long and forgot how to get out. Or Cackletta, a shadowy figure from the Mario and Luigi games who laughed in echoes and moved like smoke. She didn't jump or stomp. She whispered, vanished, and came back with eyes glowing. She was more of a feeling than a shape. A slow trick, a soft chill, a question with no answer. Some villains weren't even alive, like the angry sun who circled high above you in a clear blue sky, then suddenly dove down without warning. It didn't have a face you could reason with. It didn't follow any rules, just circled, watched, then struck. It wasn't part of the ground, it was part of the sky. That made it feel bigger, more mysterious, like it came from somewhere far away. Then there were bosses who came in groups, like the Boom Boom siblings. They looked like little versions of Bowser, but they weren't as strong. They stomped and flew in small patterns. One would spin, Another would flap tiny wings. They didn't make big speeches or cause earthquakes. They appeared, tried their best, and vanished again. Their battles were short. Their music was fast. But after enough time, they began to feel like familiar faces. You didn't fear them. You expected them. Like rain tapping on a window, brief, gentle, gone. Even Reznor, a boss made of spinning stone dinosaurs, didn't shout. He stood on a wheel, turning slowly above lava. You had to hit them one by one before the floor beneath you vanished. They didn't move much. They didn't even look at you. But they were part of the castle, part of the rhythm. Their calm spinning gave the fight its shape. And some were just odd, like Fawful, with his red glasses and strange words. He said things that didn't always make sense. He laughed when no one else did. He felt like a jester from a dream you didn't quite understand. But still, he made you smile. He made you pause. And in his silly, strange way, he added a softness to the chaos. Even the small ones, like Shy Guys, Masked Koopas, and Swoopers, had their place. Shy Guys with their blank faces and soft footsteps. Masked Koopas, who only peeked when they thought you weren't looking. Swoopers, who hung upside down until you got too close, then dropped like leaves in the wind. None of them were fast, none of them chased for long, but they made the world feel full, alive, gentle even when strange. These weren't the stars of the show. They didn't breathe fire or build machines, but they made the spaces feel real. They filled in the corners. They stood in the hallways. They floated in the skies. They reminded you that not all danger comes loud. Some of it whispers. Some of it watches. Some of it waits in silence, like a friend you forgot you missed. And as you lie there, soft and still, maybe you can picture them. The quiet ones, the watchers, the ones who didn't try to win. They just wanted to be part of the world, part of the story, part of your memory, and in that stillness, they remain. Soft shapes in the dark. Old friends at the edge of dreams. Everything in a Mario game has a rhythm, from the way the blocks are placed to how the enemies walk, jump, or float. Every moment has its own quiet pattern. Even the villains follow this rhythm. Not with words or plans, but with movements that feel like music. And as you play without even knowing it, your hands begin to match their beat. Step, jump, land. Wait, move, dodge. Again and again, like waves rolling up and back along a soft shore. Goombas walk in a straight line. They don't turn, they don't stop, but they're always there in the very first level, teaching you without saying a word. If you jump on them, they disappear. If you don't, they bump into you. That simple dance is the first lesson, and it never leaves. It's the start of the story, told without any voice at all. Koopas add another step. You jump, they hide in their shells. Then you can kick the shell forward, and suddenly it becomes something new. A spinning tool, a rolling danger. It can knock down other enemies, or bounce off walls and come right back. The game doesn't tell you this. You feel it. You try it. You learn through play, through motion. Like learning to skip a stone, then come the fire bars. Long sticks made of flame, slowly spinning in circles. They aren't enemies you can fight. They aren't alive. But they still teach something. Timing, patience, watching the way they move and knowing just when to slip past. Some are slow, some are fast. Some move in silence. Others hum with a soft crackle. But all of them are part of the same quiet message. Wait. Then go. Thwomps are big, but their lesson is small. Don't rush. Watch the way they slam down when you get too close. Then, listen. They rise back up with a slow scrape, giving you just enough time to walk beneath them. There's no trick, just trust. Trust that you can wait for the right moment and move through without fear. Ghosts, like Boos, teach you how to look, not just with your eyes, but with your attention. When you face them, they freeze. When you look away, they follow. The game turns your direction into a kind of tool. You learn to be careful with where you look, how long you stare, and when to turn. A soft, spooky lesson. Gentle, slow, like watching shadows dance across a wall. Pipes offer choices. Some take you forward, others down into hidden rooms. Some bring you to places with more coins, or maybe a single question block. Each one asks the same quiet question. Are you curious? Will you try? Will you take a moment to see what might be hiding just below the surface? Bosses work the same way. Bowser, in his many forms, always teaches in circles. You try once, it doesn't work, you try again. You see a pattern, you learn the timing, jump, avoid, strike. Every boss is a slow teacher. They don't change much. They wait for you to understand them, and when you do, you feel it, not just in your hands, but in your heart. That soft moment when a hard thing becomes easy because you listened, you noticed, you gave it time. Even the background can be a part of the lesson. Spikes that rise and fall, platforms that slide back and forth, fireworks that sparkle after the flag is reached. They don't all hurt or help. Some just are. They add to the feeling, the flow, the quiet way the level sings. In water, everything is different. You float, you sink, you move slower. Enemies don't walk, they drift. Bloopers twist through the water with soft trails. Cheap Cheeps circle in schools. The whole world feels like it's rocking, gently, like a lullaby. You learn to press the button at just the right time to swim forward, and again, and again. Like breathing, in ice, the ground slips beneath you. You can't stop right away, you slide. You learn to think ahead, to plan just a little farther out. It feels harder, but softer too, because everything moves like snow falling through air, graceful, slow, gentle. Even when you miss a step, you glide into it. Some blocks only appear when you hit a switch. Others only appear if you're moving fast. There are clouds that disappear under your feet, and platforms that carry you forward if you wait. Each piece is part of the puzzle, but not a puzzle with rules and writing. A puzzle made of feel. A lesson told through motion, and always the villains return. Not just to stop you, but to remind you of what you've learned. The Koopa Troopa that comes back, now with wings. The Boo that chases you through a maze instead of just floating. The Thwomp that hides behind two others, giving you only a small moment to pass. They grow as you grow, but gently, quietly, without needing to say a word. Sometimes you don't even notice you're learning. You just play, you try again. And each time, the world gives you a new tool. Not an item or a power-up, but something deeper. A rhythm in your hands, a calm in your thinking, a trust in your timing. These small lessons stay with you, not just when the game is on, but when it's quiet. When your eyes are closed and your breathing is slow. You remember how it felt to wait for the right moment, to jump just before the platform fell, to run toward the flag as the music picked up, only to stop and turn back, just to see if there was one more secret behind that pipe. Gameplay isn't only about moving fast or winning. Sometimes it's about slowing down, noticing the way the enemies move, feeling the level breathe, finding peace in the pattern. And maybe that's why Mario's world feels so safe, even when it's full of lava and ghosts, because everything follows a rhythm. Everything gives you time to watch, time to try, time to understand. So if your eyes are heavy now and your thoughts are drifting, let them float through the paths you've walked before, through the lessons you learned without words, through the soft timing of a world that never needed to speak to teach you how to play. Let the Koopa shell roll. Let the Boo drift. Let the fire spin in slow circles. And rest, knowing that every piece has its place, even the villains, even you. Everything in Mario's world is made with care, every pipe, every platform, every sound and shadow. But what makes the villain moments so special, so soft in your memory, is how they are designed not just to challenge you, but to guide you. Not with signs or voices, but with quiet ideas tucked inside their movement, their timing, their space in the world. The villains aren't just there to stop you, they are there to help you understand. When you enter a room with a boss, the space feels different. The colors might get darker, the music slows or disappears completely. The air, even though it's not real air, feels heavy. The room is shaped like a stage. Flat ground, high walls, maybe a moving floor or a gap in the middle. There's always just enough space to move, but not too much. The design makes you focus. Your hands slow down, your eyes follow every little change. And then the villain appears. Sometimes they drop down from the ceiling. Sometimes they rise up from the ground. Sometimes they're already standing there, waiting. But no matter how they arrive, their entrance always teaches you something. It could be the way they move, a short hop, a small spin, a long breath before a charge. These aren't just actions, they are clues. Soft, simple clues that show you what to do next. A good villain doesn't overwhelm you. It gives you space. Space to figure out the pattern. Space to learn without needing words. That's what makes Mario's design so gentle. Even when things look dangerous, the world takes your hand quietly and shows you the way. Let's look at Boom Boom. A simple boss. He runs, he jumps, he tries to spin. At first, you might not know when to jump on him, but after one or two tries, you begin to notice the rhythm. He runs faster after each hit. He pauses a little longer before spinning. His movements are soft, round, easy to follow if you're paying attention. The fight becomes less about luck and more about listening to his rhythm. You're not fighting, you're dancing. Then there's King Boo, a large, floating ghost with a sneaky smile. He doesn't just chase you, he makes you feel the room. Lights go off and on. Doors lead in loops. Sometimes mirrors reflect things you cannot see. It's not about beating him with power. It's about noticing, looking at what's different, what's strange. The room itself becomes part of the battle, and through that, you begin to understand this isn't just about speed. It's about stillness, about watching. Bowser, too, teaches in his own slow way. His fights are never just about stomping and jumping. They are about timing. In one game, you throw him into bombs. In another, you chase him through falling platforms. In Odyssey, you even play as him, crashing through walls with heavy steps. Each version of him shows you something new. Not just about the game, but about yourself. About how you've grown. How you've learned to read the world. Designers make this happen through shape, space, and silence. A long hallway before a boss door gives you a chance to breathe. A slow camera pan helps you see the whole room. Platforms placed just far enough apart teach you when to leap and when to wait. Even the color of the background, reds for danger, blues for calm, tells you something without saying anything at all. And when new mechanics are introduced, the villains use them too. In Super Mario Galaxy, gravity becomes a tool. A boss might walk upside down. You might jump from one planet to another, but these changes come slowly, one step at a time. The first time you see gravity shift, it happens in a safe space. No danger, just movement. Then later, the villains use it too, not to scare you, but to test you. To ask softly, do you remember what you learned? The same is true with light and shadow. In darker levels, enemies might be harder to see, but the game adds small glows, eyes that shine, patterns that repeat. You begin to see with more than your eyes. You see with memory, with feeling. You learn to trust what's just outside the light. There's a quiet kind of teaching happening here, not with rules, but with kindness. Every villain is placed in a space made just for them. And every space is shaped in a way that helps you understand, not by telling you, but by showing you. Softly, slowly. The fights themselves are short, rarely more than a few minutes, but they leave something behind, a pattern, A pause, a feeling. You might not remember every jump, every dodge, every coin you collected, but you'll remember how it felt to see Bowser rise up from lava, to hear the creak of a haunted house before Big Boo appears, to stand on a spinning platform while Reznor turns slowly in circles above the fire. These moments are designed to stay, not because they are loud, but because they are clear, clean, thoughtful, like a bedtime story told with light and movement instead of words. And even when you fail, the design is kind. A quick restart, a soft sound, a chance to try again. The game doesn't punish, it waits. It invites, it believes in you. So now, as you lie still and listen, think of those patterns. Think of the circles, the jumps, the spins. Think of how the world made space for you. Think of how even the villains helped you learn something new. The best kind of design doesn't shout. It whispers. It doesn't block your path. It gently guides your steps. And in the quietest corners of Mario's world, the villains are waiting. Not to scare you, but to help you grow, slowly, gently, one pattern at a time. Just like a lullaby made of movement, just like a dream made of light. In the quiet corners of Mario's world, sound becomes something more than just noise. It becomes a feeling, a whisper, a gentle hand on your shoulder guiding you forward. Every villain has a sound. Not just in their footsteps or in their fire, but in the music that surrounds them, the hum that follows them, the stillness that comes just before they appear. And when the music changes, so do you. You sit up a little straighter, you take one slower breath, you listen. The first time you walk into Bowser's castle, the music lowers, it turns heavy, dark, not loud or fast, but slow, like the beat of something deep underground. There's a drum, steady and soft, like footsteps far away. There's a soft hiss of fire, maybe a quiet rumble. These are not sounds meant to scare you. They are sounds meant to prepare you, like the way thunder rolls in the distance before a storm. It doesn't strike, it waits. Early villain themes were simple, just a few notes repeating over and over, but those notes carried so much. In Super Mario Bros., the underground theme was only a few sounds, but it echoed like a cave. It told you, without saying anything, that you were somewhere hidden, somewhere the light didn't reach. And when the castle theme played, it wasn't a song, it was a warning, made of short bursts, sharp notes, and long pauses, but still soft enough not to rush you, just enough to let you feel the walls around you tighten, gently. As the games grew, the music followed. In Super Mario World, each castle had a theme that moved slowly, almost like a march, not fast, not bright, just steady. Heavy steps in the dark. You could hear the lava in the background, the drip of something from the ceiling. It felt like the air itself was thick. The Koopalings didn't shout when they appeared. They had their own music, fast and playful, but still built on a rhythm that let you breathe between each beat. Then came the ghost houses, and everything changed. The music inside ghost levels was soft and strange. High notes drifted like mist. A quiet piano played notes that didn't feel finished. Some were short and sweet. Others held on too long. It didn't sound scary. It sounded lonely, like someone playing in an empty room. The echoes didn't bounce back. They just disappeared into the dark, and when a boo floated close, there wasn't a scream, just a quiet giggle, a gentle whoosh. Almost like the ghost was sighing. Each enemy had its own sound, not just footsteps or attacks, but tiny careful touches. The chain chomp barked, sharp and sudden, but only once. Then it paused, waiting. The thwomp slammed down with a deep thud that made your hands shake a little, even if you were safe. And when dry bones fell into a pile, there was a soft rattle, like wind brushing through old leaves. You didn't need to look at them, you could hear them coming. In Super Mario 64, the music became deeper, more layered. Bowser's first level started with a song that felt like fire. Not because it was fast, but because it was low, heavy. There were low strings, a soft drum, and just a little brass, like danger breathing in your ear. When Bowser appeared, the music didn't explode. It bent. It curled. It pulled you into something that felt bigger than you, but never rushed. Never too much. Just enough to make the moment feel full. And then there was the silence. Some of the scariest, most beautiful villain moments came with almost no sound at all. Like when you walk through a door and find yourself in a dark hallway. The music fades, the only thing you hear is your own footsteps. And maybe something else. Just under the silence, a soft hum, a gentle wind, maybe even your own heartbeat. That silence is part of the music too. It gives you space, it gives you time. In Super Mario Galaxy, sound became something like stars, floating, soft. The music didn't just play in the background, it moved with the level, it shimmered, it sparkled. Villain fights here had grand themes, full of violins and soft choirs. But even when the orchestra swelled, the rhythm was slow. It was like hearing waves under moonlight. Bowser's music was powerful, but never harsh. It was a lullaby made of fire and stone, and in Odyssey, each kingdom had its own sound. The forest was full of soft drums and soft bells, like walking through leaves. The desert had echoes, soft claps of wind, and low strings. Even the ruined kingdom, where a dark dragon waited, didn't scream. It hummed. The music was low, cold, and slow. It didn't warn you, it invited you, like saying, "Come closer, see what waits." Villain themes are not just meant to scare, they're meant to shape the space, to shape you. They remind you to take your time, to move gently, to watch, to listen, and they stay with you, long after the level ends, long after the game is over. Even now, as you rest, you might hear them. A soft piano drifting in from a memory, a drum tapping in the corner of your thoughts, a little echo in the distance. These are the sounds that made those villain moments feel real. Not because they were loud, but because they were made with care. Some songs you forget, but the ones from Mario's world, the villain themes, the castle songs, the haunted house tunes, those stay. Like lullabies from an old dream, like stories told with no words, just soft notes, gentle rhythms, and long, quiet pauses. And when your eyes begin to close and your breathing slows, the music doesn't stop. It only gets softer. It becomes part of the room around you, part of the night, part of your thoughts. Because sound, in this world, was never just for your ears, it was for your heart. And your heart remembers a slow, steady rhythm, a distant melody, a whisper made of music, still playing, still here, just like you. Long after the games are turned off, long after the sound fades and the lights blink out, the villains of Mario's world still remain, not just in the memory of battles or tricky jumps, but in something deeper. They live in stories shared between friends, in drawings on school notebooks, in the corners of lunchbox stickers and pajamas, in the way a laugh can remind you of Bowser's roar, or how a shadow at the end of the hall feels just a little like Boo. They've moved beyond the screen, they've drifted into something wider, something soft and lasting, something like culture. It started slow. A plush toy, maybe. A Koopa Troopa stuffed with cotton and sewn with careful lines. A small Bowser figure standing proudly on a bookshelf. A t-shirt with a Thwomp's grumpy face printed in the middle. Little things scattered like power-ups across everyday life. Then came the bigger pieces. Cartoons on weekend mornings, with the Koopalings dancing and singing, their voices silly, their colors bright. They became characters, not just bosses. You didn't need to beat them anymore. You could just watch them live in their strange, cheerful world. And the voices grew familiar. Bowser's grumble, Wario's giggle. Even Shy Guys, who spoke in simple squeaks, became sounds that kids would mimic on playgrounds. Not out of fear, but joy. Not because they were scary, but because they were fun. These weren't villains who stayed locked in castles. They walked right out, smiling, and sat down next to you during breakfast. Then came the board games, the trading cards, the party games, where you could play as the villains, not to destroy, but to race, to dance, to swing at baseballs, or play tennis in the sun. There they were, Bowser and King Boo and Waluigi, cheering, pouting, spinning in circles when they won, and you laughed. Because these were no longer just characters that chased you, they were part of the party, part of the fun. In arcades and malls, their images flashed on screens and posters. You could win a Dry Bones plush or take a photo beside a giant, inflatable Goomba. You could wear socks with piranha plants or decorate cakes with little edible Bowsers. And still, the games kept coming, each one adding something new. A new world, a new sound, a new piece of the story. But also, somehow, bringing the old ones back just enough to make you smile. In Super Smash Bros., the villains stood tall beside the heroes, equal, balanced. You could be Bowser, heavy and slow but powerful, or Ganondorf, floating in from another world, or Ridley from space. All of them came together not to scare, but to play, and in that game you could see something beautiful, a kind of gathering, a soft reunion of stories from faraway places, now meeting in the same place, sharing the same stage. Even people who never played the games knew the names. Bowser, Wario, maybe even Ludwig, or Morton, or Roy. They were no longer just characters in levels. They had become part of the way we talk, laugh, and play. You could see someone make a silly mistake and say, "Oops, I went full Wario there." You could tease a friend by calling them King Boo if they sneak behind your back in a board game. These names had meaning, feelings, they had grown roots. And as more generations joined in, something peaceful happened. Parents played alongside their kids, sometimes showing them the old castles, sometimes exploring the new ones together. And when a young player met Bowser for the first time, maybe in a bright game like Mario Kart or Super Mario Maker, the parent might smile and say, "He's been around a long time." Not as a warning, but as a welcome, like introducing an old friend who still wears the same spiky shell. In classrooms and libraries, Mario coloring books showed Goombas with funny hats, or bullet bills wearing party glasses. Children filled in the colors with soft crayons, not red for rage, but pink, purple, green, every color of the rainbow. Villains were no longer dark and dangerous. They were blank pages, waiting to be colored however the heart wished. And isn't that a lovely thing? To take something once meant to frighten and turn it into a friend. The music of the villain themes, too, made their way beyond the game. You could hear the Ghost House melody, played by orchestras. You could find lullaby versions of Bowser's battle theme turned into soft piano songs for babies. No longer something to run from, now something to fall asleep to. Music that once warned, now comforted. And in all of this, the villains never stopped being themselves. Bowser still roared, Wario still schemed. Boo still giggled behind hands. But now, those traits were stories, not scares. Pieces of a bigger puzzle that we held onto without even noticing. They became little lights that glowed in quiet places, in memory, in joy, in togetherness. Even in books, their stories grew. Comic strips and picture books told tales of villains getting lost, getting lonely, getting found again. Sometimes they won, sometimes they didn't, but always they were part of the world. Not just on the edge, not just at the end of the level, but in it, breathing, living, changing, and maybe that's the real magic. That villains who were once simple shapes on a screen have become something warm, something wide, a shared smile, a small spark, a name passed from child to parent and back again. They don't need to chase you anymore. They just sit quietly in the stories we tell, in the music we hum, in the dreams we remember. Now, as your eyes begin to close and your thoughts move gently like floating platforms, you can feel them still. The villains of Mario's world. Not outside the story, but inside it, woven into it, Bowser in a wedding suit, Boo with a shy smirk, Wario making trouble just to make someone laugh. They're not just part of the game, they're part of the world now. Yours, ours, still glowing, still spinning, still waiting at the edge of dreams. Sometimes, the things we remember most are the quiet ones, the moments we didn't expect, the shadows tucked behind the main path, the whispers hiding between sounds. The villains in Mario's world have always stood tall in the center of the screen, but some of their most powerful stories live in the small spaces, the hidden corners, the soft places where secrets rest and only the curious wander. Maybe you remember a block that seemed too high to reach. You ran and jumped again and again until your fingers hurt. And just when you were about to give up, you found a spring hidden under a ledge. It wasn't marked. It didn't shine. It was just there, quiet and still, waiting for someone to look deeper. And when you bounced high enough to hit that block, poof, a vine grew up into the sky, higher and higher past the clouds. It led to coins, maybe, or maybe a floating platform, or maybe just the feeling that the world was bigger than it seemed. Villain worlds have those kinds of secrets too. Not everything in their castles or lairs is fire and stone. Sometimes there are hidden rooms, doors that don't show themselves until you've stood on a certain tile, or boxes that appear only when you turn your back. Ghost houses are filled with these things: fake doors, endless loops, stairs that vanish and reappear. They don't always lead to prizes. Sometimes they lead to nothing at all. But even that nothing has a kind of magic. The kind that makes you stop and wonder, who built this and why? In some games, you can fall through the floor, not because it's broken, but because someone wanted you to fall. And when you land, instead of being punished, you find something strange. A smiley face made of coins. A sign that points nowhere, or even a painting of a villain wearing sunglasses. These are not part of the story. They're not part of the rules. They're just little nods. Like a quiet wink from the people who made the world, as if they're saying, "We see you. You found it." There are glitches too. Places where things don't work the way they should. Sometimes a Koopa walks through a wall. Sometimes a Boo freezes in the air and never moves again. And sometimes, if you jump in just the right way, at just the right time, you can slide through a space where no one was meant to go. These aren't planned. They weren't placed there on purpose, but they feel like secrets anyway, because they remind you that even this bright, beautiful world has little cracks, little folds, and sometimes those folds feel like doors to something older. There's one place in Super Mario 64 where the staircase goes on forever. You walk up and up and up, and no matter how long you keep walking, you never reach the top. The music spins in circles. The walls blur. You begin to wonder if something's wrong, but it's not. It's just a trick, a soft wall placed in the shape of a loop. It only breaks when you have the right number of stars. Until then, it's endless. And that loop, that stairway to nowhere, feels like a dream you can't wake from. A quiet mystery that doesn't hurt you, doesn't trap you, just asks you to listen. Some villains have secret forms too. Bowser doesn't always look the same. Sometimes he's made of bones. Sometimes he's huge and glowing. Sometimes he rides a giant robot or floats in a glass ball. And other times he looks tired. Smaller, his eyes softer, he's still the boss. But you can feel that he's changed, that maybe after all this time he's grown too. In the corners of Mario's world, you can find little stories that no one ever tells out loud, like the Thwomp with a bandage on his head, or the Wiggler who starts angry, then smiles when you jump on the right part of the flower, or the Goomba hiding behind a wall far away from the others, just pacing back and forth with no path forward. They don't ask for help. They don't give coins, but they're there, little echoes, gentle thoughts made into shapes. And when you reach the end of a villain's castle, when the fire fades and the music slows, sometimes you find something unexpected. Not just a flagpole or a key, but a quiet space. A hallway with no enemies. A platform that carries you through stars. A room with soft lights and slow music. These spaces are not loud. They don't cheer for you. They don't try to be remembered, but somehow they are. Because after all the jumps and puzzles and laughter, they give you time to breathe. Even the villains themselves, the ones who try to stop you, become part of something softer. You might see them again later on, not in battle, but at a party, or in a race, or in a crowd cheering on someone else. Their faces are the same, but their purpose has changed. They're not enemies anymore. They're guests, players, friends, and maybe that's the greatest secret of all, that these characters, built from pixels and sounds and code, have become something more. They've become part of your story, not just because you played the game, but because you felt something along the way. A moment of joy, a quick laugh, a gentle shiver, a spark of wonder. The world of Mario isn't just made of bricks and coins and castles. It's made of feelings, the way a soft note drifts through a haunted hall, the way lava glows beneath a falling bridge, the way you can fail again and again, but still try one more time, the way villains rise and fall and yet never truly leave. And now, as your eyes grow heavy and your thoughts move like clouds through quiet skies, you can feel that world still turning. Slowly, softly, the secrets are still there, the ghosts still watch, the vines still grow high into the blue, and the villains are still waiting, not to hurt you, not to chase you, but to welcome you back whenever you're ready. You don't need to jump anymore, you don't need to run, you don't even need to play, just rest. Let the music fade. Let the blocks stay where they are, let the lava cool, let the castle doors close behind you, and in the stillness that follows, know this, they're still there. The villains, the shadows, the soft tricks, the tiny secrets, all of them sleeping now, just like you.